So the first one, in defining and categorizing the educational outcomes, I understand you did a fair bit of work on that yesterday. Recognizing Bloom's as one framework. I know you talked about Fink's. There are a variety of frameworks to think about different levels of educational outcomes. And again, I want to emphasize what you heard yesterday is that these outcomes need to be specific and observable behavioral language. Simply saying, as many of my colleagues like to put down, they need to understand pathophysiology or pharmacology or immunology. Understanding, that's what's happening in here. You don't know their understanding unless they do something. And that's the behavior of the task that we're trying to focus on. So think about those outcomes and objectives and observable behavioral standards. And again, this is expensive stuff. It takes resources, so focus on things that matter. I want to try to get you to think about outcomes in 4 categories. These are not the categories that you automatically will see in a lot of textbooks, because what I want to do is break Bloom's into these first 2 levels here. The knowledge that we were just talking about, and higher level cognitive skills, so the problem solving, the analysis, the evaluation. Not because they're different, although they are in some ways, but because they often have different assessment methods associated with them. Think about outcomes that relate to attitudes. So the challenge with the affective domain, if we can describe it that way, is to translate that into some observable behavior. Because these are values, these are very internal kinds of things. And they should manifest themselves in various ways, but it's not always going to be really obvious or really transparent. And then finally, the performance and psychomotor skills. This is, again, in medicine, this is a very important outcome. So you've got a lot of outcomes, a lot of goals in your teaching that you can think of. And I'd encourage you in your breakout session to think a little bit broader, not just the knowledge stuff, not just Bloom's, but think of these other kind of domains of outcomes. You talked about Bloom's, and again, I made that division there between the simply recalling factual knowledge and a lot of the application. It's worthwhile, and in your handout you've got a greater detail, a description of this, that there have been other frameworks and hierarchies developed for these other domains as well. So there's a framework for thinking about different levels of affective outcomes. Other frameworks for looking at the psychomotor domain. Not going to go into these in detail. It's in your handout if you want to pursue those. The key thing is to recognize that there are some traditional assessment methods that link to these various domains. So in this case, we would need to take these internal states and translate them into a behavior. And one framework that we've been using a lot in the health sciences is to think about the assessments in terms of this hierarchy, where a lot of our assessments in school tends to focus on the bottom there. We assess what people know. But when we go higher up into certainly Bloom's taxonomy, we're trying to look at how people start applying that information. So they just know factual information or know how to solve problems, the theoretical understanding. But then more rigorous is being able to show that I know how to use this information. Show this in our paper problem of the football player. Show it in a controlled environment, so a classroom setting where it may not be real life, but we can show we can solve these problems. And ultimately to do it in real life. And again, in medical environment, we do a lot of this, of observing students and residents actually interacting with patients. So we see that they can actually do it, not just show it in a controlled environment. But to recognize that this is a bit of a hierarchy, that each of these is more sophisticated, more complex, and more expensive to do.